My parents said I'd never own a home like my sister. Then they saw my address. They mocked my dreams for years until one visit forced them to admit I'd built the life they said I'd never have. My name is Grace. I'm 34 years old. And 6 months ago, my mother stood up at Easter dinner, looked right at me in front of 25 relatives, announced that I was the only Holloway who couldn't put a roof over her own head. She was wrong, but not in the way you'd expect. My dad nodded along like he always does. My sister laughed and leaned over to me with that pitying smile. You're jealous, aren't you? 2 weeks later, I invited her over for tea at my new address. When she walked through the front gate, she couldn't dial our mother's number fast enough. She was shaking so hard she could barely hold the phone. What she said was, "Mom, you have to see this right now." But that moment was 13 years in the making. Before I take you back to the beginning, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story earns it. Drop your city and your local time in the comments. I'm curious where you're listening from. Now let me take you back to a Tuesday night in November 2022. The night I found out what my mother actually did with my college fund. My apartment was a studio in Southeast Portland, 540 square feet. One window that rattled when trucks passed a kitchen faucet that dripped on a 3-second cycle no matter how hard I cranked the handle. I didn't hate it. At 28, I figured this was just the cost of starting from zero. And I do mean zero. I was a cybersecurity analyst at a mid-sized firm downtown. My first real title after 4 years of grinding through contract gigs. Salary $68,000 before taxes. Student loan payment $1,400 a month. I ate a lot of rice and frozen vegetables. I drove a 2011 Civic with a cracked dash. I kept a spreadsheet on my phone that told me down to the penny how much I could spend on groceries each week. That's the life my mother liked to describe to relatives at family dinners, except she made it sound worse. Here's what she didn't describe. The reason I had student loans in the first place. When I was 18, 2 weeks before my freshman year at Oregon State, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table. Her voice was soft, the way it gets when she's delivering bad news she's already rehearsed. "Sweetheart, your college fund, it didn't survive the market. It's gone." "I'm so sorry," I cried. She held me. Then she helped me fill out federal loan paperwork the next morning like it was the most natural thing in the world. Meanwhile, my sister Meredith had bought her first house at 27 4 bedrooms in Lake Osco. My mother told everyone the same story. Meredith saved up. She's always been smart with money. That was 3 years before Uncle Frank called me on a Tuesday night and told me the truth. At that point, I still believed my mother about the fund. That changed in a single phone call. "Let me paint the picture for you." Thanksgiving, Meredith's house. The dining table sat 14 and my mother moved through that room like she'd designed it herself. She pointed out the light fixtures to Aunt Patrice. She ran her hand along the kitchen island for my cousin Dennis. She did everything except hang a sign that read, "This is what success looks like." I sat at the corner of the table between Uncle Dennis and a cousin I saw once a year. My mother was talking to Aunt Patrice across the cranberry sauce. She didn't lower her voice. She never did. "Harper's still renting a studio. Bless her heart, that tech thing she does. It's so unpredictable. I worry." Patrice glanced at me. I smiled. Then Meredith from the head of the table tilted her head at me the way people tilt their heads at sick animals. "Hey, Harper. Want me to ask around if the brokerage real estate is way more stable than whatever you're doing?" "I'm fine, Meredith, just trying to help." My father looked at his plate. He cut his turkey into very small pieces. He didn't say a word. After dinner, I offered to help with dishes. Meredith waved me off. "You're a guest." She said it kindly, but the subtext was clear. This is my kitchen in my house, which I own. That night, scrolling through my phone in the car before I drove home, I noticed something. Meredith had created a new family group chat for planning Christmas. Everyone was in it, everyone except me. When I texted her about it, she replied in 30 seconds, "Oh my God, I totally forgot adding you now." She never added me. The call came on a Tuesday in November. I was sitting on the floor of my studio laptop open, debugging a firewall config for a client presentation the next morning. My phone buzzed. Uncle Frank, he never called. We texted on birthdays. Maybe that was it. I picked up. Harper. His voice sounded like he'd been pacing. "I've been going back and forth about this for a long time, but I can't carry it anymore." "Carry what, Uncle Frank?" A long pause. I could hear him breathing. "Your mother didn't lose your college fund, sweetheart. She withdrew it. All of it. $42,380. The March you turned 18. I didn't say anything. I was at the bank. I watched her sign the withdrawal form. I told her it was wrong. She told me to mind my own business. Then she didn't speak to me for 2 years. The faucet dripped. 3 SE second and cycle. Drip, drip, drip. The money went straight into her joint account with your father. 2 weeks later, Meredith closed on her down payment. I slid off the couch onto the kitchen floor. Cold tile on the backs of my legs, phone pressed against my ear so hard it hurt. I didn't cry. Something behind my ribs just went quiet like a pilot light going out. Harper, you there? I'm here. I know this is a lot, but you deserve to know. Yeah? My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Yeah, I did. Uncle Frank said one more thing before he hung up. I kept the bank statements, Harper. All of them. You tell me when you're ready. I sat on that floor for a very long time after the line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my back staring at a water stain on the ceiling and ran the math. $42,000 withdrawn in March of my senior year. With even conservative growth over the 13 years since call it 5% annually, that fund would have been worth close to $55,000 in today's dollars. $55,000 that was supposed to pay for my education. That instead paid for my sister's front door. But the money wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was what would happen if I confronted my mother. I could see it so clearly it made my jaw ache. Gloria Holloway did not lose arguments. She redirected them. If I called her, she'd deny it. She'd say Frank was bitter, that he'd always been dramatic, that he was trying to destroy the family. Meredith would back her up. She always did. My father would sit in his recliner with the TV volume turned up 2 notches higher than normal. And within 48 hours, my mother would have called every aunt and cousin to explain that poor Harper was going through something and lashing out. I'd become the villain. She'd become the victim. Nothing would change. But if I stayed silent, I kept being the footnote, the family cautionary tale, the daughter who rented a studio and worked in that tech thing. Neither option moved me forward. So at 2 a.m, I opened my laptop. I created a spreadsheet with 3 columns: monthly income, monthly savings target. The target had a 7-figure number. Confrontation gives liars a stage. I decided I'd build my own stage instead. I closed the laptop at 3:15, set my alarm for 6, and went to sleep for the first time that night. I had a presentation in the morning. My mother called the following Sunday. Sweetheart, I ran into Patrice at the store. She mentioned a landlord in Milwaukee who has some affordable units. Shall I get the number? I gripped my phone. I'm not looking for a new place, Mom. Oh, I just thought you mentioned your rent went up. I didn't mention that. Well, someone did. Anyway, it couldn't hurt to have a backup. After she hung up, I sat very still. Then I opened Facebook. Aunt Patrice had messaged me 4 days earlier. Hey, honey, your mom said you're looking for something cheaper. I know a guy. Uncle Dennis Harper. No shame in downsizing. Let me know if you need help moving. My cousin Laura. Your mom told my mom you're in a tough spot. Thinking of you. My mother had turned me into a charity case. She'd called every branch of the family tree and told them I was drowning without ever asking me how I was actually doing. I scrolled through 7 messages, 7 different relatives, all parroting the same story. Gloria Holloway's version of my life distributed like a press release. Then I noticed Meredith's Facebook post from that morning. A photo of her newly remodeled kitchen, white quartz countertops, brass fixtures, caption, "So grateful for this space. Thanks, Mom, for always believing in me." The post was dated November 17th, my birthday. I put the phone down. I opened my spreadsheet. I adjusted the savings column upward by $200 a month. That meant no eating out, no new clothes, no streaming subscriptions. I was fine with that. My mother measured my worth in square footage. I was done converting. There was one person I trusted at work. Diane Prescott, VP of Threat Intelligence, 56 years old, silver bob reading glasses she wore on a chain like a librarian, who could also dismantle your network in 12 minutes. I didn't tell her about my family, not then. I just asked a question. Diane, what does it take to move up here? She looked at me over those glasses. You're already doing the work, Harper. You just need to stop being invisible. She pushed a file across her desk. A proposal for a new enterprise security audit, our biggest client, a regional hospital chain. The previous team lead had quit mid-project. This is yours if you want it. It's ugly. Tight deadline. But if you land it, people above me will know your name. I took the file. For the next 11 months, I worked 12-hour days, sometimes 14. I lived on coffee and meal prepped chicken. I automated 40% of my paycheck into an investment account, index funds, nothing fancy, and pretended that money didn't exist. I stopped sharing anything about my job with my family, not because I was hiding it, because every time I'd mentioned work before, my mother had waved it off like I was describing a hobby. That computer thing. Are they even going to keep you? The last time I told her about a project win, she'd changed the subject to Meredith's new patio furniture within 2 sentences. So I just stopped and nobody noticed. The hospital audit shipped on time under budget. The client renewed for 3 years. Diane sent me a 2-line email the day the contract closed. Nice work. Come see me Monday. 12 months later, Diane called me into her office. I thought I was in trouble. I was wrong. A year can change everything if you let it. Diane promoted me to team lead. Salary jumped to $112,000. New badge, new floor, new title on the company directory. I didn't post about it. I didn't call anyone. I just updated my spreadsheet. Christmas came around. Meredith hosted as always. Her house smelled like cinnamon and new paint. She'd remodeled the living room. $30,000. She announced to the room within 5 minutes of our arrival. Shiplap accent wall recessed, lighting a 75-inch TV mounted like a museum piece. My mother walked guests through like a docent. Meredith picked the wood herself. Isn't she talented? This kitchen layout was entirely her idea. Then she found me by the drink table. So still renting that little place. Yes, Mom. Well, at least you're saving, right? Her voice dripped with the kind of sympathy you offer strangers at a bus stop. Meredith appeared at her elbow. You know, Harper, if you'd listened to me about real estate, I'm fine, Meredith. I'm just saying I could have gotten you into the market years ago. Sure, you don't have to be defensive. I'm not. My mother patted Meredith's arm. Your sister bought this kitchen herself. That's what a plan looks like, Harper. I sipped my water, smiled, said nothing. Later in the hallway by the bathroom, Todd Meredith's husband stopped me. He was holding 2 beers and looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Hey, your mom talks a lot. He handed me a beer. Don't believe everything. I looked at him. He shrugged and walked away. It was the kindest thing anyone in that house said to me all night. February, a Wednesday evening. I was debugging a server migration when my phone buzzed. A voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. Male voice, mid-40s, cheerful in that forced way people get when they've been told to call someone. Hey, Harper, this is Greg. Greg Whitaker. Your mom gave me your number. She says we'd really hit it off. I'm in commercial insurance. Got a place over in Beaverton. Anyway, give me a ring when you get a chance. I deleted the message. 20 minutes later, my mother texted Gloria. Greg is a catch. Harper, his mother says he owns his house outright. Harper. I didn't ask you to set me up, Mom. Gloria, you're 31, no house, no husband. I'm trying to help. Harper. I said no. Gloria, he owns a house. Harper. Harper. Good for him. Gloria, you're going to end up alone. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the keyboard for maybe 10 seconds. Then I locked the phone, set it face down on the desk, and went back to my server migration. She measured every milestone against real estate and a marriage license. 31 in single crisis, 31 in renting emergency. It didn't matter that I led a team of 9 people. It didn't matter that my company had trusted me with a 7-figure client portfolio. None of that registered on Gloria Holloway's scoreboard. I finished the migration at 11:40 that night. Clean deployment, 0 downtime. My team slacked me a string of party emojis. I made a cup of tea, sat on my studio floor, and thought about Greg Whitaker and his house in Beaverton. Then I opened Zillow. Not for Greg, for me. 6 months after that, everything accelerated. Diane promoted me again. Senior manager salary, $145,000 plus bonus. The index fund I'd been feeding for 2 years had nearly doubled. My spreadsheet, the one I'd built at 2 a.m. on that cold November night, finally had numbers that meant something. I started driving through neighborhoods on Saturday mornings alone, coffee in the cup holder, phone on silent. I didn't tell anyone. Not Diane, not Uncle Frank, not a soul. I wasn't looking for a house. I was looking for a feeling. I found it on a hillside in West Hills. 4 bedrooms, a wraparound deck that overlooked a valley of Douglas firs, floor-to-ceiling windows in the living room that turned the sunset into a wall of amber and copper. Hardwood floors, stone fireplace, a kitchen island with space for 6 people to sit, and nobody to feel like they were at the kids' table. The listing price was $950,000. I ran the numbers twice, called my financial advisor, reviewed my portfolio. Then I called the listing agent and made an offer. 3 weeks later, I sat in a title office and signed my name 47 times. They handed me a key and a folder containing the deed. I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat, held the key in my palm. It was warm from the title agents. I didn't call my mother. I didn't text Meredith. I didn't post anything. I just drove to my new house, unlocked the front door, and stood in the empty living room while the last bit of daylight slid down the far wall. I had the key. I had the deed. What I didn't have was a reason to tell my family. Not yet. I moved in on a Saturday in early January. No moving truck, no fanfare, just my Civic packed tight with whatever mattered. clothes laptop, a box of books, a cast iron skillet that had survived 4 apartments. The house was empty and enormous. My footsteps echoed off the oak floors. Sunlight came through the wall of glass in the living room and through long rectangles across the bare floor. Outside, Doug firs swayed in a breeze that smelled like rain and cold earth. I bought furniture slowly. A couch, first gray, deep-cushioned, big enough to disappear into, then a bed frame, a kitchen table I found at an estate sale in Selwood. Solid maple, slightly scarred. I liked the scars. They made it feel earned. One weekend, I painted the living room wall behind the fireplace warm white. It took 2 coats and most of a Sunday. My arms ached. I didn't mind. The only person I invited over was Diane. She stood in the entryway, looked up at the vated ceiling, then out through the glass at the valley below. She was quiet for a long time. "This is stunning, Harper. Does your family know?" "Not yet." She studied my face. "You're not punishing them by hiding this. You're protecting yourself." "Maybe." I poured her a glass of wine. Or maybe I just don't want to hand them another thing to ruin. That night after Diane left, I unpacked a file box I'd been avoiding. On top was the deed to the house. Beneath it was a folded document in a manila envelope, the one Uncle Frank had mailed me the week before. I looked at it. Then I put both documents in the top drawer of my desk. There was a second document in that drawer. I wasn't ready to look at it yet. In March, Meredith's daughter, Lily, turned 4. Birthday party at Meredith's house. The whole family crammed into the backyard under a rented canopy. I brought a stuffed elephant and a card with a 20 inside. Lily hugged my leg and ran off. That part was good. Then my mother introduced me to her new book club friends who'd come for the party. "This is Harper, my youngest." She put her hand on my shoulder. She's still finding her path. "I'm a senior manager and cybersecurity mom." My mother laughed. Not at the joke because there wasn't one, but in the way people laugh to fill a gap. "Oh, those tech titles. They change every week, don't they?" Meredith passing behind us with a plate of cupcakes. At least she has a good attitude about it. The book club women smiled politely. I smiled back. Then I noticed someone I hadn't expected to see. Uncle Frank was sitting in a lawn chair by the fence, a paper plate balanced on one knee. He'd been re-invited to family events about a year ago after 2 years of Gloria's freeze-out. He kept to himself mostly, but when I crossed the yard, he looked at me and gave me a single slow nod. I sat beside him. "The bank statement I sent you," he said quietly. "Your mother's signature is right there. Date, amount, account number. You read it." "Not yet, Uncle Frank. Soon. Take your time. It's not going anywhere." Across the yard, my mother watched us. I saw her expression shift just for a half second. Something tightened around her eyes. Then she turned to Aunt Patrice and launched into a story about Meredith's new pergola. "Frank," she called across the yard just loud enough. "Don't fill her head with your nonsense. You always dramatize." Frank took a sip of his lemonade and said nothing. That night, I drove back to West Hills. I made a cup of chamomile. I sat at my kitchen table, the scarred maple one, and pulled the manila envelope from my desk drawer. For a minute, I just held it. Then I opened it. The document was a bank statement from Pacific Northwest Federal Credit Union. A custodial account opened on September 3, 2004, the year I turned 3. Beneficiary Harper Elaine Holloway. Custodian Gloria A. Holloway. Deposits appeared every month, $50, then $100, then $200 as the years went on. By March of my senior year, the balance read $42,380. Then a single line withdrawal March 14, 2013, $42,380. Authorization, Gloria A. Holloway. Transferred to joint checking account ending in 7741. I stared at the numbers. My mother's signature was at the bottom of the authorization page. Neat cursive. The same handwriting that had signed my permission slips and birthday cards. 2 weeks after that withdrawal, Meredith closed on her house. I folded the statement, placed it back in the envelope, put it in the drawer next to my deed. Then I called Uncle Frank. I read it, and I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to beg. I looked out the window. City lights scattered across the valley floor like a second set of stars. I'm just going to be ready when the moment comes. That's my girl. We were quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "When Easter is 8 weeks away, Meredith's hosting 25 people. I know. I might need you there. I'll be there." I hung up and washed my tea mug, dried it, put it away. Easter was 8 weeks out, 25 hallways under one roof, and for the first time in years, I was looking forward to it. Easter Sunday arrived the way Oregon Aprils do. Cold in the morning, bright by noon, the kind of sky that couldn't decide between rain and mercy. Meredith's house was already full when I pulled up. Cars lined the cul-de-sac. Through the front window, I could see bodies moving, platters being passed, my mother's silhouette directing traffic in the dining room. I sat in my car for 30 seconds, breathed. The house was decorated to within an inch of its life, tulips in every vase, a centerpiece made of moss and ceramic rabbits, linen napkins. Meredith had gone all out, and my mother had clearly helped. Her fingerprints were on every detail. I walked in wearing a simple navy blouse and jeans. No jewelry, no statement piece. I hugged my aunt. Patrice shook Uncle Dennis's hand, kissed Lily on the forehead. My mother found me within 3 minutes. Harper, you look thin. Are you eating high, Mom? Happy Easter. Doesn't she look thin? This to Patrice, who nodded diplomatically. I poured myself a glass of sparkling water and stood near the kitchen island while my mother gave tours. Meredith just had the living room repainted. Farrow and Ball, she picked the shade herself. Those floors are original oak. Meredith had them refinished. The deck extension was Meredith's idea. Every sentence was a ribbon tied around Meredith's life, presented to the audience for applause. Todd appeared beside me with a plate of deal-old eggs. Brace yourself, he said under his breath. Your mom's in performance mode. I took an egg. I know, she's been rehearsing the toast since Thursday. I looked at him. Toast Todd went slightly. You'll see. I didn't need to brace. I'd already decided what I was going to do after dinner. Not during, after. After the meal, everyone drifted into the living room. Kids on the floor, adults in chairs. My mother stood in the center, wine glass raised, glowing like a woman who had rehearsed this exact moment in her bathroom mirror. I just want to say a few words. She looked around the room. Meredith, thank you for hosting, for opening your beautiful home to all of us. She swept her hand wide. This house, this life you've built. This is what hard work looks like. The room applauded. My mother smiled. Then she turned to me and Harper. Honey, her voice dropped into that register. The soft one. The one that sounds like compassion but cuts like a credit check. We're all rooting for you. One day you'll get there. A few people laughed. Short, uncomfortable. My cousin Laura looked at her shoes. Uncle Dennis coughed. Meredith leaned toward me from the next chair, close enough that 5 or 6 people could hear. There's no shame in renting, Harper. We all start somewhere. The pity in her voice could have filled a swimming pool. Then Aunt Patrice, sweet Patrice, who meant well and understood nothing, reached over and touched my arm. Gloria told me, you're looking for a cheaper place. I know a wonderful landlord in Milwaukee. The room got quieter, heads turned. My mother had told everyone. Every single person in this room believed I was struggling, downsizing, barely scraping by. She'd built that narrative so carefully over so many years that it was now the only version of me any of them had ever known. I'm not looking for a cheaper place, Patrice. Oh, honey, there's no shame in asking for help. I didn't ask. My mother's chin lifted. Your pride will be your downfall, Harper. I set my glass down. I didn't say another word. Not yet. It happened in the hallway 10 minutes after the toast. Meredith caught me as I was heading toward the coat closet. She positioned herself between me and the front door, arms crossed, head tilted. 5 or 6 people lingered within earshot. Patrice Dennis, cousin Laura Todd. Honestly, Harper, Meredith's voice was half whisper, half performance. Are you jealous? It's okay to admit it. Jealous of what, Meredith? She waved her hand in a slow circle. The house, the life, the fixed-rate mortgage and the shiplap accent wall and the $30,000 kitchen. Of this, I worked for this. I looked at her, held her gaze for 3 full seconds. The hallway was very quiet. I'm sure you did. Something flickered across her face. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. It means I'm sure you did. She stared at me. I didn't blink. She couldn't read me, and that scared her more than any insult would have. She turned and walked back to the living room. I heard her voice pitched to Carrie. Mom, Harper's being weird again. My mother's sigh was audible from 20 feet away. She's always been the difficult one. In the corner of the living room, Uncle Frank set his coffee cup down on the end table. Slowly, his eyes moved from Meredith to Gloria and stayed there. Gloria noticed. For just a second, she met his stare. Then she turned away and started clearing dessert plates as if she hadn't seen him at all. But I'd seen it, that tiny flinch, that half second where my mother remembered that Frank knew something she'd spent 13 years burying. I picked up my jacket. It was time to plant the seed. I had my coat on keys in my hand. My mother was already halfway through her closing commentary. Harper always leaves early. It's just her way. When I stopped at the edge of the living room, actually, Meredith, my sister looked up from the couch mid-con conversation with Patrice. I'd love to have you over for tea this Saturday. I have a new place. The room shifted, not dramatically, Just a small atmospheric change like a barometric drop before a storm. Gloria frowned. A new place? What new place? I just moved. Nothing big. I kept my voice light. Saturday, 2 o'clock. Meredith's confusion was genuine. She wasn't faking it. You moved and you didn't. When did you? It happened fast, Mom. I shrugged. I'll text Meredith the address. Meredith looked at Gloria. Gloria looked at me for a single beat. Nobody said anything. Sure, Meredith said slowly. I'll come. Great, bring Todd if you want. I pulled on my jacket. Thanks for hosting, Meredith. Dinner was lovely. I walked through the front door and didn't look back. The evening air hit my face sharp and clean. Behind me, I could hear my mother's voice already recalibrating. She's probably renting another apartment. You know how she is. But I caught one other thing as the door closed. Uncle Frank still in his corner chair watching me leave. He was smiling. First time all night. I drove home, my home through the dark hills. The trees were black against a slate sky. My hands were steady on the wheel. Saturday was 5 days away. For the first time in years, I couldn't wait to open my front door. Okay, pause. Before Meredith shows up at my door, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had someone in your family take credit for something that was yours, or spread stories about you that weren't true, just to make themselves look better? Drop it in the comments. I want to hear your story. And if you've made it this far, hit subscribe. You don't want to miss what happens when Meredith walks through that gate. Let's keep going. Saturday came slowly. I spent the morning cleaning not because the house was dirty, but because I needed something to do with my hands. I vacuumed the already clean hardwood. I wiped down the granite island even though no one had used it. I arranged 2 ceramic mugs on the counter side by side. Then I baked scones, lemon, and blueberry. The recipe was from a cookbook I'd found at Goodwill my first month in the studio apartment. The scones came out golden and slightly uneven. Perfect. By 1:30, the house smelled like sugar and citrus. Afternoon light poured through the living room glass and turned the oak floor into something honeyed. The valley spread out below the deck in layers of green and gray. I changed into a cream sweater and jeans. No makeup beyond what I usually wore. No heels. This wasn't a performance. The house would do the talking. At 1:45, my phone buzzed. Meredith, OMW. What's the address again? I sent it. Meredith, wait, West Hills. That's a nice area. Are you house sitting, Lowell? I didn't reply. I put the phone on the kitchen counter, poured hot water into a teapot, and set it on the table next to the scones. 2 chairs, 2 napkins. Simple. Then I sat in the living room and looked out the window. The firs were swaying in a light wind. Somewhere far below, a car horn sounded and faded. My hands weren't shaking. For the first time in years, they were perfectly still. I heard gravel crunch in the driveway at exactly 2:03. I stood up, smoothed my sweater, and walked to the front door. Meredith's SUV sat in the driveway, engine still running. I could see her through the windshield. She wasn't moving. She was staring at the house the way you stare at something that doesn't match the picture in your head. She turned off the engine, got out, stood on the driveway with her purse hanging from one hand and her mouth slightly open. I opened the front door. Hey, come on in. Tea's ready. She walked up the stone path, her heels clicked on the pavers. She stopped in the entryway and looked up. Veited ceiling, the staircase with its iron railing, the living room visible through the archway, the wall of glass, the valley. She turned in a slow circle. Her hand went to her mouth. This is your place. Yes, you bought this. I did. She walked into the kitchen, touched the granite island, opened a cabinet, closed. It walked to the glass wall and stood there staring at the view. Harper. Her voice was smaller now. How I worked, I saved, I invested, but you were renting. I was. Now I'm not. She stood in my living room for what felt like a full minute without speaking. Then her face crumpled. Not into anger, not into happiness. Into something I hadn't expected. Confusion. Raw, disorienting confusion. She pulled out her phone. Her fingers were shaking. She hit dial, pressed the phone to her ear, waited 1 ring, 2 Her voice cracked. Mom, you need to come here right now. You have to see this right now. I heard Gloria's voice through the speaker, tinny and alarmed. What? What is it? Are you hurt? Just come. I'll send you the address. Meredith hung up and looked at me. I gestured to the kitchen table. Would you like sugar in your tea? Gloria arrived in 19 minutes. That's fast. From Lake Osgo to West Hills on a Saturday. She must have driven like the house was on fire. I heard 2 car doors, my mother's heels on the stone path fast and sharp, my father's slower steps behind her. Meredith opened the front door before I could. "In here, come in." Gloria stepped into the entryway. She was wearing a lavender cardigan and the pearl earrings she saved for events. She must have been getting ready for something when Meredith called. She looked up. She stopped. 5 seconds. No sound except the wind through the trees outside. "What is this?" "My house. Mom. Welcome." She walked forward as if the floor might not hold into the living room. She touched the back of my couch, looked at the fireplace, the stone mantel, the built-in bookshelves I'd been slowly filling. She walked to the glass wall and stared at the valley. "But you never said," her voice was thin. "How could you afford—" "I've been a senior director at my company for a year, Mom. My salary and investments covered it." "Senior director." "Since when?" "Since you stopped asking about my job." She turned around. Her face was the color of paper. Richard stood in the doorway. He hadn't moved past the threshold. His eyes were red. His chin was trembling. I'm proud of you, Harper." His voice barely held together. It was the first time he'd said those words to me in my adult life. Gloria spun toward him. "Did you know about this?" "No, I didn't." Then my father did something I'd never seen before. He walked across the room and put his arms around me. Gloria stood 3 feet away outside the embrace vase, white hands at her sides. My father held me for a long time. He smelled like sawdust and Old Spice, same as when I was 10, same as always. His hands shook against my back. When he let go, the room had shifted. Meredith was sitting on the edge of the couch, knees pressed together, staring at the floor. Gloria hadn't moved from her spot by the window. And then Meredith said the thing that cracked the dam. "I don't understand." She looked up at me. "How did you save enough?" "You had student loans, massive ones." "Yes, I did. I mean, neither of us had a college fund. Mom said both funds were lost in the— yours wasn't lost." "Meredith." The room went airless. My sister blinked. "What?" "My $42,000 was withdrawn the year I turned 18, 2 weeks before your down payment." Meredith's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's not—" She turned to Gloria. "Mom." My mother's jaw was tight. Her fingers had found the hem of her cardigan and were twisting it. "That's ridiculous. Who told you that nonsense?" "Someone who was there." "Frank." She said his name like a curse. "Frank has been trying to tear this family apart for the front door opened." Everyone turned. Uncle Frank stood in the doorway. He wore a flannel shirt and work boots. His hair was wind-blown from the drive. In his right hand, he held a plain white envelope. He looked at Gloria. She looked at the envelope. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother completely, utterly silent. "Hey, everyone." Frank stepped inside and wiped his boots on the mat. "Sorry I'm late. Traffic on 26 was a mess." He walked over and placed the envelope gently on the kitchen table between the teapot and the scones. Nobody touched the envelope for what felt like a very long time. Then I picked it up, unsealed the flap, pulled out the bank statement, and laid it flat on the table. "Pacific Northwest Federal Credit Union," I said. My voice was even. "Custodial account opened September 2004. Beneficiary Harper Ella Holloway. Custodian Gloria A. Holloway." I pointed to the bottom of the page. "March 14th, $42,380. Full withdrawal. Signed Gloria Holloway." I slid my finger to the next line. "Transferred to joint checking account ending in 7741. I looked at Meredith. 2 weeks later, your down payment cleared." Meredith stood up, walked to the table, picked up the statement with both hands and read it. Her lips moved slightly as her eyes tracked the numbers. "Mom." Her voice was very small. "You told me this was your savings. You told me you and Dad set aside money." Gloria's face had gone from white to red. "Frank, you had no right to keep that. I had every right." Frank's voice was calm, unshakable. "She's my niece, and you lied to her face for 13 years. It was family money. I had the right to allocate. It was in my name, Mom." I said it quietly, but the room heard it. A custodial account for my education, not Meredith's down payment. Richard was sitting now. He'd found a chair by the wall. His head was in his hands. "Gloria," his voice came out raw. "You told me the fund performed badly. You showed me a statement." Frank shook his head. "She showed you a different statement, Rich. The real one is right there on the table." "Everything I did was for this family," Gloria said. "No, Mom." I met her eyes. "It was for Meredith." Meredith put the bank statement down. She pressed her palms flat against the table and stared at the grain of the wood. "Mom." She didn't look up. "You told me it was your savings. You told me Harper's fund was gone. I did what was best. Gloria's voice had shifted higher, faster, defensive. Meredith, you needed a house. You were getting married. Harper was always, she was always fine on her own. Fine on my own because I had no choice, I said. Meredith looked at me. Her mascara was starting to smudge. I didn't know, Harper. I swear I didn't know. You didn't ask. I kept my voice steady. That's not the same as not knowing. She flinched. It was slight. A tightening around the eyes, a small inward breath, but it was real. She knew I was right. Todd had been standing in the kitchen doorway the entire time, arms at his sides. He'd come with Meredith. He'd heard everything. He looked at his wife. Mayor, we need to talk about this at home. Todd, please. Your sister built this house. He looked around the room by herself while your mother told everyone she was broke. Think about that. Meredith pressed her fingers against her eyelids. She was crying now quietly, the way people cry when the tears have been waiting a long time. Richard finally lifted his head. His voice was barely above a whisper. Gloria, you told me the fund performed badly. I saw a statement. It showed losses. Frank crossed his arms. She showed you a manufactured summary. Rich, the real account record, the one from the credit union, has her signature on the withdrawal. It's not ambiguous. Richard looked at his wife of 36 years. She looked at the floor. He didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. My mother tried one more time. Harper. She straightened her spine, found her voice, the one she used at PTA meetings, at holiday tables, at every occasion where she needed to be the authority in the room. After everything I've done for you, I raised you, I fed you, I kept this family together. You raised me. I nodded. That's true. And I'm grateful for the parts that were real. She started to speak. I held up one hand, not aggressively, just a pause. But you also stole from me and lied about it for 13 years. Those two things can both be true, Mom. I'm your mother and I'm your daughter. That should have meant something. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard in my own house. I took a breath. I'm not cutting anyone off, but some things are going to change. I looked at each of them in turn. Meredith, Gloria, Richard. You don't get to tell people I'm struggling when I'm not. You don't get to define my life to the family. You don't get to rewrite my story so yours sounds better. Gloria's mouth opened. Nothing came out. And if you want to be in this house, I paused. You come as a guest, not as a narrator. The teapot was still warm on the table. The scones sat untouched on their plate. I'm not asking for the money back, I said. I don't need it. I built this without it, but I am asking you to stop lying about who I am. Nobody spoke. I picked up the teapot and filled 2 mugs, set one in front of Meredith, one in front of the empty chair next to her. Tea's getting cold. Gloria, for the first time in my memory, had absolutely nothing to say. If you've ever had to set a boundary with someone who raised you, and I know that's one of the hardest things a person can do, drop A in the comments. And if this story is hitting close to home, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Let's keep going. There's more. The fallout was fast. By Sunday night, the story had spread through the entire family like water through a crack in the foundation. Todd told his sister. His sister told her husband. Meredith, whether she meant to or not, confirmed the details to Aunt Patrice on the phone that evening, and once Patrice knew, it might as well have been printed in the newspaper. My phone started ringing Monday morning. Patrice, Gloria told us you were broke. We had no idea, Harper. All these years we thought we just believed her. Uncle Dennis. Kid, why didn't you ever say something? Would you have believed me over her? The silence on the other end was its own answer. Cousin Laura sent a text. I feel sick. I'm sorry for every time I offered you help you didn't need. Over the next week, relatives started calling Gloria. Not to comfort her, to ask questions, hard ones, the kind she couldn't redirect with a laugh or a wave of her hand. Gloria's response was predictable. She blamed Frank. He's always been jealous of our family. He's trying to destroy everything I've built. But there was a bank statement on a kitchen table in West Hills with her signature at the bottom. You can't talk your way around ink on paper. One by one, the calls to Gloria stopped. Not with dramatic confrontations, just silence. Patrice didn't invite her to book club that month. Dennis didn't ask her to organize the 4th of July cookout. Cousin Laura removed Gloria from the family group chat, the one I'd never been added to. My mother lost the one thing she valued more than money, the narrative. For 13 years, she had been the author of every whole story. Now the family was reading a different version, and they believed it because it was true. Meredith called 3 days later. I was on my deck watching a red-tailed hawk ride a thermal above the valley. My phone buzzed. I let it ring twice before I answered. Harper. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. I keep thinking about that bank statement. Okay, I should have asked where the money came from. I was 23 and I wanted the house so badly. Todd and I were getting married and Mom said she'd been saving for years and She trailed off. I didn't want to look too closely. I know. I'm sorry, Harper. I'm really, really sorry. Thank you. That matters. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing uneven, the kind of breathing that comes between rounds of crying. Todd and I talked a lot. He said, I've been treating you the way Mom taught me to. He's right. I see that now. Meredith, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be honest. She made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. That's the scariest part. We sat in silence for a moment, not the uncomfortable kind, the kind that means something's shifting even if you can't name it yet. Then she said something I didn't expect. Todd almost left me last year. Did you know that Number Mom was calling every day telling me how to raise Lily, how to decorate the house, what Todd should be doing with his career? Todd said he didn't marry Mom, he married me. And if I couldn't see the difference, he was done. I didn't want to see it, she said quietly, because if I saw it, I'd have to give something back. I let that sit. I didn't need to add anything. 2 weeks later, my mother called. I was making dinner. Roasted chicken, rosemary potatoes, green salad. I answered on the fourth ring. Harper. Her voice was different, quieter, stripped of the usual polish. Hi, Mom. Nobody calls me anymore. Patrice won't return my messages. Dennis told me he needs space. She said the word like it tasted foreign. Your sister barely speaks to me. That's not my doing, Mom. I just wanted Meredith to have a good start. That's all it was at my expense. Without telling me, without asking. A long silence. I thought you'd never find out. I turned down the stove, leaned against the counter. That's the part that hurts the most, Mom. Not the money. The fact that you were comfortable lying to me forever. I could hear her breathing quick and shallow, the way you breathe when you're trying not to cry. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Can we just go back to normal? No, but we can go forward if you're willing to be honest. She didn't respond for a long time. I could hear the clock ticking in her kitchen through the phone. The same clock that had hung over the stove my entire childhood. I don't know how she finally said. I closed my eyes. That's the first honest thing you've said to me in 13 years, she hung up. I finished making dinner. The next Saturday, my doorbell rang. It was my father alone. No Gloria. He was holding a toolbox. Your deck railing looked loose when I was here last time. You want to fix it if you'll let me. I held the door open. He stepped inside. We didn't talk much that afternoon. He fixed the railing. I made coffee. We sat on the deck and watched the light change. It wasn't much, but he was there. Summer came. I stood in a conference room on a Tuesday morning while Diane introduced me to the entire company. New title Vice President of Security Operations. 200 people on the Zoom call. 3 offices watching on the big screen. Diane said Harper Holloway has been the backbone of our security practice for 3 years. She's earned this every single day. People applauded. I thanked them and sat down. My hands were steady. I didn't post about it. I didn't tell my family. Not yet. Some things you hold for yourself first. The following weekend, I invited Uncle Frank over for dinner. He showed up with a bottle of Willamette Valley Pinot Noir and that quiet grin he gets when he's holding something back. We ate on the deck. The sunset turned the valley into copper and violet. The firs swayed in a warm breeze. After dinner, Frank sat down his glass and looked at me. Your grandmother would have been proud, Harper. I paused. Grandma Margaret, she's the one who opened that fund for you, not your mother. Margaret started it the year you were born, $50 a month from her Social Security check. She told Gloria to keep it for your education and nothing else. I put my fork down. Mom never told me that. No, she wouldn't have. My grandmother had died when I was 14. I remembered her hands always warm, always smelling like lavender soap. I remembered her saying at every visit, "You're the stubborn one, Harper." She'd say it like it was the best thing a person could be. I cried first time in this entire story, not from sadness, from knowing that even when nobody in my house was watching out for me, someone had been. From the very beginning, Frank handed me a napkin and didn't say a word. Meredith and I started meeting once a month, never at either of our houses, neutral ground, a coffee shop on Division Street with wobbly tables and espresso that could strip paint. The first few times were awkward. Lots of silences, lots of stirring drinks that didn't need stirring, but we kept showing up. She told me about couples therapy with Todd, about learning to hear her own voice instead of Gloria's, about the moment she realized she'd been performing her entire adult life, staging her home, curating her Facebook, measuring her worth by the same ruler our mother had built. I was so busy proving I was the successful one. She said that I never asked if I was happy. I didn't have an answer for that, but I listened. And sometimes that's enough. In September, a letter arrived at my house. No return address I recognized. Inside a single page, handwritten. My mother's handwriting. The same neat cursive that was on the bank withdrawal form. Harper, I made choices that weren't mine to make. I'm trying to understand why. I don't know if I can explain it, but I'm trying. Mom, no, I'm sorry. No grand apology, just an opening small and uncertain like a crack in a wall. I read it twice, folded it carefully, put it in the top drawer of my desk next to the deed and the bank statement. 3 documents that told the story of who my family was and who we might become. A week later, Meredith invited me to Thanksgiving her house. You don't have to come, she said, but I'd like you there. Will Mom be there? Yes. I thought about it for exactly 1 day. I'll come, but I'm driving myself, and I'll leave when I'm ready. That's fair. It was for the first time. It actually was. I'm sitting in my living room right now telling you this story. The fire's going. There's a cup of coffee on the side table that's gone lukewarm because I've been talking to you for a while. Outside, the valley is gray-green under low clouds, and the firs are doing that slow sway they do when the wind can't decide which direction to blow. My mother measured success in square footage. My sister measured it in comparison. My father measured it by keeping the peace, which it turns out isn't the same as keeping anyone safe, and me. For a long time, I measured it in silence. The kind of silence that builds things nobody sees coming. I don't hate my mother. Hate is heavy, and I've been carrying enough. I don't hate Meredith either. She's trying clumsily and perfectly, and that counts. What I stopped doing was waiting for them to see me, waiting for them to give me permission to be proud of what I'd built, waiting for the version of my mother who would look at my life and say I was wrong. I built something they couldn't ignore. Not to punish them, not to prove them wrong, but because I deserved a life that wasn't written by someone else. If you're in a family where your worth gets measured by someone else's ruler, put the ruler down. You don't have to break it. You don't have to throw it away. Just put it down and pick up your own. The front door to my house has a deadbolt that I paid for on a door that I chose in a home that I earned. But the best part isn't the house. The best part is that I'm the one who decides who gets the key. 3 things I learned the hard way. 1, silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. The loudest response I ever gave my family was a house on a hill and a teapot on the table. 2, you don't owe anyone a confrontation, but you owe yourself the truth. The bank statement didn't fix everything, but it meant nobody could rewrite my story again. 3, boundaries aren't walls, they're doors with better locks. My mother can knock. She just can't walk in and rearrange the furniture anymore. If any of this hit home, leave a comment and tell me which of those 3 lessons landed the hardest for you. I read every single one. And if you want to hear another story about someone who refused to stay small, I've linked one in the description that I think you'll love. Thank you for staying until the end. I mean that. I'll see you in the next one.